A lot of people have asked me, hey Daniel, how do I make my footage look more cinematic? And that's a really great question, but I don't know that it has one really great answer. So today I figured I'd take some footage and see if I could make it look cinematic. Let's try this. So I took some very simple footage of a faucet dripping and another piece of footage of a drop of water hitting some water below and creating a splash. And I thought that maybe I could do something between the two of these to create sort of a dramatic scene. And I figure if I can make a simple leaky faucet look cinematic, then maybe I've done something right. The first thing I did was to bring this footage into my video editing software, which I used Filmora 10. What I decided to do visually was allow that faucet to drip several times and then slow the last drip down and have that last drip move exceptionally slow and elongated so that I really accentuated the one drip coming out of the faucet. Then I would pause and swap over to the other footage of that drop hitting the water. Now there are some simple things that you can do to make footage seem more cinematic, like changing the aspect ratio. Most of the videos I make for YouTube are 16:9, but for cinematic purposes, let's move this to 21:9. Changing the aspect ratio also changes the crop, so you want to keep that in mind when you're actually filming to make sure you're a little bit back to be able to catch everything in so you're not too squashed down and cutting off too much of the top and bottom. I color corrected the footage using a built-in LUT that came with Filmora called Gravity. It made the water a little more blue than it was from the original footage. The word LUT stands for lookup table, and all this really is sort of a giant set of instructions that tells your footage a bunch of different color corrections to make all at once at the click of a button. I did dial up the saturation, contrast, and brightness just a touch to make it pop a bit more, but that was really all I did to the color. As you can see, I'm adding different LUTs to my footage right now, and you can see how much it changes the look of it with each different LUT I overlay onto this footage. There is no one single right LUT for what you're trying to accomplish because it really depends on how your footage looks to begin with and the adjustments that need to be made to it to make it look more cinematic than it already is. I also slowed down the impact speed so that drop hitting the water seemed exceptionally huge. But did that make this footage cinematic? I needed to step up my game. Let's break down this footage into sections I think I need to focus on. We've got the first section where the water's dripping at normal speed. Then we've got the one slowed down drop. We've got that drop breaking free and falling out of scene. And then we've got the switch over to the other footage where the drop comes into the shot, impacts with the water, and then the water explodes. So these are all hit points that I'm gonna be thinking about while I design the soundscape for this clip. I brought this into my digital audio workstation, Reaper, and I started building layers underneath it. The first thing I knew it needed was the dripping sound effect of the water coming out of the faucet. I was able to find a dripping sound effect, but I had to slice it up to make sure that each drip coincided with the timing of the water dripping from the faucet. I wanted it to have a very cavernous feel, so I added a little bit of compression and reverb onto it to bring that drip sound to the next level. That last drip that I had slowed down was the one I really wanted to accentuate. So I found a sub-bass effect and put it on that section to really highlight the stretching of the water as it came from the faucet. I cut that short right as the drip separated from the rest of the water. And I picked it back up right where the droplet hit the water underneath. The next thing I thought of is I really wanted to build some tension as the water was coming out of the faucet, so I started with some synth crescendos right as the last drop was falling from the faucet. The next layer was actually some underwater sounds that I layered in as that last drop fell and as it picked back up afterwards. That crescendo got me thinking that I should really accentuate the point coming up to that final drip that comes out of the faucet. So I found this cool rising string effect that I put right underneath that and faded it in slowly. Now that I had that crescendo sounding like something, I needed to deal with the other side of that water droplet, the impact. My first choice was this longer impact that I thought made a lot of sense for the hit. The problem was I didn't like the way it echoed as much, and I wanted to really just accentuate the hit, so I clipped it so that it stopped right when the water connected. I found an additional hit that had a similar effect, and the two together did exactly what I wanted. Now that I had the sweeping motion up to the water droplet hitting, I needed to focus on everything that happened after the impact. I actually found a few sounds of iron and metal being hit that I thought would work really well. I used reverb and pitch shift to try to tune them, and then I tried to move to the sounds of what would happen next, which was probably the water after the droplet actually hit. So I found a water splash sound, but it was pitched a little too high and it didn't last quite long enough based on the speed, so I pitched it down and added a little reverb to it to make it sound like this. Then it was just a matter of adding a little atmospheric water motion sound and some swooshes to try to bring that to the next level, and I was left with nothing more than trying to find the right music to put under it. Finding the right music and learning how to use it in your video can make all of the difference. I've never been a fan of just sticking music underneath a piece of video. I like working with that audio and seeing if I can make it something more than it was when I found it. Sometimes that's the most challenging thing. When I was thinking about water, all I could think about was the sound of piano keys being hit, so I found a piano track that I thought might work. I chopped it right where the water drop broke free, but it sounds very truncated. So what I did in that case was to add a little bit of reverb on top, and that let it sound less chopped and edited. For where the water hit, I just picked that same track up right on the beat where the water made impact. But an interesting thing happened as I played that track through. I realized that later on there were some violins and strings that came in. So what I did was I cut that end portion out, brought it into another track, and overlaid it on top of the existing audio track that was my music bed. I just synced the timing of the two and let that same track play over itself, panning each a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. 16 layers later, I exported everything, took a listen, and this is what I came up with.